Hey everybody, it's me, not Corbin, Fugativeredeye here. And since on my channel I did a compilation of the Creepypastas from Corbin, I thought, why not also allow Corbin to have a compilation of my readings of Creepypastas in this video. I haven't put any of the longer ones in here, but it's just kind of a compilation of some of the short ones I've read, so I hope you enjoy. It's October, and I figured Corbin could use the compilation here. Gateway of the Mind. In 1983, a team of deeply pious scientists conducted a radical experiment in an undisclosed facility. The scientists had theorized that a human without access to any senses or ways to perceive stimuli would be able to perceive the presence of God. They believed that the five senses clouded our awareness of eternity, and without them, a human could actually establish contact with God by thought. An elderly man who claimed to have nothing left to live for was the only test subject to volunteer. To purge him of all his senses, the scientists performed a complex operation in which every sensory nerve connection to the brain was surgically severed. Although the test subject retained full muscular function, he could not see, hear, taste, smell, or feel. With no possible way to communicate with or even sense the outside world, he was alone with his thoughts. Scientists monitored him as he spoke aloud about his state of mind in jumbled, slurred sentences that he couldn't hear. After 4 days, the man claimed to be hearing hushed, unintelligible voices in his head. Assuming it was an onset of psychosis, the scientists paid little attention to the man's concerns. 2 days later, the man cried that he could hear his dead wife speaking with him, and even more, he could communicate back. The scientists were intrigued, but were not convinced until the subject started naming dead relatives of the scientists. He repeated personal information to the scientists that only their dead spouses and parents would have known. At this point, a sizable portion of the scientists left the study. After a week of conversing with the deceased through his thoughts, the subject became distressed, saying the voices were overwhelming. In every waking moment, his consciousness was bombarded by hundreds of voices that refused to leave him alone. He frequently threw himself against the wall, trying to elicit a pain response. He begged the scientists for sedatives, so he could escape the voices by sleeping. This tactic worked for 3 days, until he started having severe night terrors. The subject repeatedly said that he could see and hear the deceased in his dreams. Only a day later, the subject began to scream and claw at his non-functional eyes, hoping to sense something in the physical world. The hysterical subject now said that the voices of the dead were deafening and hostile, speaking of hell and of the end of the world. At one point he yelled, "No heaven! No forgiveness!" for 5 hours straight. He continually begged to be killed, but the scientists were convinced that he was close to establishing contact with God. After another day, the subject could no longer form coherent sentences. Seemingly mad, he started to bite off chunks of the flesh of his arm. The scientists rushed into the test chamber and restrained him to a table so he could not kill himself. After a few hours of being tied down, the subject halted his struggling and screaming. He stared blankly at the ceiling as teardrops silently streaked across his face. For 2 weeks, the subject had to be manually rehydrated due to constant crying. Eventually, he would turn his head and, despite his blindness, made focused eye contact with a scientist for the first time in the study. He whispered, "I have spoken with God, and he has abandoned us," and his vital signs stopped. There was no apparent cause of death. The Russian Sleep Experiment. Russian researchers in the late 1940s kept 5 people awake for 15 days using an experimental gas-based stimulant. They were kept in a sealed environment to carefully monitor their oxygen intake so the gas didn't kill them, since it was toxic in high concentrations. This was before closed-circuit cameras, so they only had microphones and 5-inch thick glass porthole-sized windows into the chamber to monitor them. The chamber was stocked with books, cots to sleep on, but no bedding, running water, and a toilet, and enough dried food to last all 5 for over a month. The test subjects were political prisoners deemed enemies of the state during World War II. Everything was fine for the first 5 days. The subjects hardly complained about having been promised, falsely, that they would be freed if they submitted to the test and did not sleep for 30 days. Their conversations and activities were monitored, and it was noted that they continued to talk about increasingly traumatic incidents in their past. And the general tone of their conversations took a darker aspect after the 4-day mark. After another 5 days, they started to complain about the circumstances and events that led them to where they were and started to demonstrate severe paranoia. They stopped talking to each other and began alternatively whispering into the microphones and one-way mirrored portholes. Oddly, they all seemed to think they could win the trust of the experimenters by turning over their comrades, the other subjects within captivity with them. At first, the researchers suspected this was an effect of the gas itself. After 9 days, the first of them started screaming. He ran the length of the chamber, repeatedly yelling at the top of his lungs for 3 hours straight. He continued attempting to scream, but he was only able to produce occasional squeaks. The researchers postulated that he had physically torn his vocal cords. The most surprising thing about this behavior is how the other captives reacted to it. Or rather, didn't react to it. They continued whispering to the microphones until the second of the captives started to scream. The 2 non-screaming captives took the books apart, smeared page after page with their own feces, and pasted them calmly on the glass portholes. The screaming promptly stopped, so did the whispering into the microphones. After 3 more days passed, the researchers checked the microphones hourly to make sure they were working, since they thought it impossible that no sound could be coming with 5 people inside. The oxygen consumption in the chamber indicated that all 5 must still be alive. In fact, it was the amount of oxygen 5 people would consume at a very heavy level of strenuous exercise. On the morning of the 14th day, the researchers did something they said they would not do to get a reaction from the captives. They used the intercom inside the chamber, hoping to provoke any response from the captives they were afraid were either dead or vegetables. They announced, "We're opening the chamber to test the microphones. Step away from the door and lie flat on the floor or you will be shot. Compliance will earn one of you your immediate freedom." To their surprise, they heard a single phrase in a calm voice respond, "We no longer want to be freed." Debate broke out among the researchers and the military forces funding the research. Unable to provoke any more responses using the intercom, it was decided to open the chamber at midnight on the 15th day. The chamber was flushed of the stimulant gas and filled with fresh air, and immediately the voices from the microphones began to object. 3 different voices began begging, as if pleading for the life of their loved ones, to turn the gas back on. The chamber was opened, and soldiers were sent in to retrieve the test subjects. They began to scream louder than ever, and so did the soldiers when they saw what was inside. 4 of the 5 subjects were still alive, although no one could rightly call the state that any of them were in life. The food rations past day 5 had not so much as been touched. There were chunks of meat from the dead test subjects' thighs and chests stuffed into the drain in the center of the chamber, blocking the drain and allowing 4 inches of water to accumulate on the floor. Precisely how much of the water was on the floor was actually blood was never determined. All 4 quote-unquote surviving test subjects also had large portions of muscle and skin torn away from their bodies. The destruction of flesh and exposed bone on their fingertips indicated that the wounds were inflicted by hand, not teeth, as the researchers initially thought. Closer examination of the position and angles of the wounds indicated that most, if not all of them, were self-inflicted. The abdominal organs below the ribcage of all 4 test subjects had been removed, while the heart, lungs, and diaphragm remained in place. The skin and most of the muscles attached to the ribs had been ripped off, exposing the lungs through the rib cage. All the blood vessels and organs remained intact. They had just been taken out and laid on the floor, fanning out around the eviscerated but still living bodies of the subjects. The digestive tract of all 4 subjects could be seen to be working, digesting food. It quickly became apparent that what they were digesting was their own flesh that they had ripped off and eaten over the course of days. Most of the soldiers were Russian special operatives at the facility, but still many refused to return to the chamber to remove the subjects. They continued to scream to be left in the chamber, and alternately begged and demanded that the gas be turned back on, lest they fall asleep. To everyone's surprise, the test subjects put up a fierce fight in the process of being removed from the chamber. One of the Russian soldiers died from having his throat ripped out, and another was gravely injured by having his testicles ripped off, an artery in his leg severed by one of the subject's teeth. Another 5 of the soldiers lost their lives if you count ones that committed suicide in the weeks following the incident. In the struggle, one of the 4 living subjects had his spleen ruptured, and he bled out almost immediately. The medical researchers attempted to sedate him, but this proved impossible. He was injected with more than 10 times the human dose of a morphine derivative, and still fought like a cornered animal, breaking the ribs and arm of one of the doctors. When his heart was seen to beat for a full 2 minutes after he had bled out to the point that there was more air in his vascular system than blood, even after it stopped, he continued to scream and flail for another 3 minutes, struggling to attack anyone in reach, and just just repeating the word more, more, over and over, weaker and weaker, until he finally fell silent. The surviving 3 test subjects were heavily restrained and moved to a medical facility. The 2 with intact vocal cords continuously begged for the gas, demanding to be kept awake. The most injured of the 3 was taken to the only surgical operating room that the facility had. In the process of preparing the subject to have his organs placed back within his body, it was found that he was effectively immune to the sedative that they had given him to prepare him for surgery. He fought furiously against his restraints when the anesthetic gas was brought to put him under. He managed to tear most of the way through a 4-inch wide leather strip on one wrist, even through the weight of a 200-pound soldier holding that wrist as well. It only took a little more anesthetic than normal to put him under, and the instant his eyelids fluttered and closed, his heart stopped. In the autopsy of the test subject that died on the operating table, it was found that his blood had triple the normal level of oxygen. His muscles that were still attached to his skeleton were badly torn, and he had 9 broken bones in his struggle to not be subdued. Most of them were from the force his own muscles had exerted on them. The second survivor had been the first of the group of 5 to start screaming. His vocal cords destroyed as he was unable to beg or object to surgery, and he only reacted by shaking his head violently in disapproval when the anesthetic gas was brought near him. He shook his head yes when someone suggested, reluctantly, they try the surgery without anesthetic, and did not react for the entire 6-hour procedure of replacing his abdominal organs and attempting to cover them with what remained of his skin. The surgeon presiding stated repeatedly that it should be medically possible for the patient to still be alive. One terrified nurse assisting the surgery stated that she had seen the patient's mouth curl into a smile several times whenever his eyes met hers. When the surgery ended, the subject looked at the surgeon and began to wheeze loudly, attempting to talk while struggling. Assuming that this was something of drastic importance, the surgeon had a pen and pad fetched so that the patient could write his message. It was simple: keep cutting. The other 2 test subjects were given the same surgery, both without anesthetic as well, although they had to be injected with a paralytic for the duration of the operation. The surgeon found it impossible to perform the operation while the patients laughed continuously. Once paralyzed, the test subjects could only follow the attending researchers with their eyes. The paralytic cleared their system in an abnormally short period of time, and they were soon trying to escape their bonds. The moment they could speak, they were again asking for the stimulant gas. The researchers tried asking why they had injured themselves, why they had ripped out their own guts, and why they wanted to be given the gas again. Only one response was given: I must remain awake. All 3 subjects' restraints were enforced, and they were placed back into the chamber awaiting determination as to what should be done with them. The researchers, facing the wrath of their military benefactors for having failed the stated goals of their project, considered euthanizing the surviving subjects. The commanding officer, an ex-KGB, instead saw potential, and wanted to see what would happen if they were put back on the gas. The researchers strongly objected, but were overruled. In preparation for being sealed in the chamber again, the subjects were connected to an EEG monitor and had their restraints padded for long-term confinement. To everyone's surprise, all 3 stopped struggling the moment it was let slip that they were going back on the gas. It was obvious at this point that all 3 were putting up a great struggle to stay awake. One of the subjects that could speak was humming loudly and continuously. The mute subject was straining his legs against the leather bonds with all his might. First left, then right, then left again, for something to focus on. The remaining subject was holding his head off a pillow and blinking repeatedly. Having been the first to be wired for EEG, most of the researchers were monitoring his brainwaves in surprise. They were normal most of the time, but sometimes flatlined inexplicably. It looked as if he were repeatedly suffering brain death before returning to normal. As they focused on paper scrolling out of the brainwave monitor, only one nurse saw his eyes slip shut at the same moment his head hit the pillow. His brainwaves immediately changed to that of deep sleep, then flatlined for the last time, as his heart simultaneously stopped. The only remaining subject that could speak started screaming to be sealed in now. His brainwaves showed the same flatlines as the one who had just died from falling asleep. The commander gave the order to seal the chamber with both subjects inside, as well as 3 researchers. One of the named 3 immediately drew his gun and shot the commander point blank in the eyes, then turned his gun on the mute subject and blew his brains out as well. He pointed his gun at the remaining subject, still restrained to a bed, as the remaining members of the medical and research teams fled the room. "I won't be locked in here with these things! Not with you!" he screamed at the man strapped on the table. "What are you?" he demanded. "I must know." The subject smiled. "Have you forgotten so easily?" the subject asked. "We are you. We are the madness that lurks within you all, begging to be free at every moment in your deepest animal mind. We are what you hide from in your beds every night. We are what you sedate into silence or paralysis when you go to the nocturnal haven where we cannot tread." The researcher paused, then aimed at the subject's heart and fired. The EEG flatlined as the subject weakly choked out, "So nearly free." 11 miles. Do you have something that you truly, relentlessly desire? Despite your state of life, is there something else that you would go completely to the end of the world to get? Well, lucky for you, there's a way to achieve what you're looking for. And you won't need to go to the end of the world to get it. But you will need to go somewhere. And the place may be too out of reach for some. It's not far away, closer than one may believe. But there's requirements that some individuals may not possess. First, whatever it is you seek, know that you must seriously desire what you want. In your eyes, it should be something you need. If you begin the journey without the correct state of mind, you will surely fail, as it will be near impossible to turn back once the journey starts. The second requirement is that you will need a vehicle of a sort. Most use a car, as it's the most comfortable choice. There have been a select few that have used small motorized vehicles, such as an ATV or a motorcycle, but this has proven to be quite difficult, as the conditions of the journey can prove to be too bothersome. Do not use a vehicle too large or noticeable, as you will need some sort of cover of night to be most safe. Also, while any sort of car will do, you may not want to choose the most expensive or cherished vehicle. You can take your slick new black Mercedes for the drive if you'd like, but don't expect it to come back out in a pristine shape. Make sure your vehicle is completely fueled before beginning to drive. The first task to accomplish is to locate the road. It doesn't have a name, it's not on the map, and technically, it doesn't even exist. It will only show up if you're looking for it at the right time. And you will only spot it if you know what to look for. Finally, you must be alone during your journey. You didn't think you'd be able to go with a group, did you? It must be night when you begin. Choose the time of night where you believe the roads are the least populated. Drive to any area that is just a stretch of road surrounded by woods. Here's where you start paying close attention. If you're looking for the road, it'll turn up eventually, but you'll need to search for the road's hint in order to pull down the right one. Once you're close, you will see or feel its signs, but what the signs are will depend on what you desire. For example, if you search for wealth, you may spot shimmers on the empty branches of the trees, as if they resembled the shine of gold or diamonds. If you seek love, you may begin to see rose petals slowly dance in the light breeze, blowing in the road's direction. If you seek revenge, you might sense an ever-growing feeling of heat or anger in your body as you approach. Just know what it is you really want, and you'll have no problem finding the turn. Once you're sure you've found the revealed road, take a deep breath and turn down onto it. At this point, you have officially started down the nameless road, which will bring you through 11 miles, leading to whatever it is you seek. Each mile will test your desire, and will expose if you really want what you're searching for. Before you go any further, stop the car and be wary of a few advisements. Do not turn on the radio during the drive. Do not use a phone during the drive. Reception will be cut off anyway. Do not open the windows during the drive. Make sure they are closed before you continue. If you're riding a vehicle without windows or a top, then prepare for the worst, as the odds are heavily against you. Do not attempt to leave your vehicle at any time. You'll never want to exceed 30 miles per hour, unless you're desperate to make it through a section of the road. And most importantly, as with any drive, buckle up. Feel free to prepare and make sure you're ready. Once the road has been entered, time is stopped, so you don't need to worry about losing the night. Though you may not notice, you're actually not in your own world anymore. Take one last moment to realize that, once the first mile is over, there's no turning back. If you ponder turning back at all, know that you shouldn't even be on the journey in the first place. Once all is done, start continuing on the road. For the first mile, you won't see much change. The road passes through mostly woods, with a few miles being an exception. The air will turn a bit colder, in which you should turn on your heating system if the vehicle has one. You won't want to take your eyes off the road later. Take some time to calm any uneasiness by admiring some of the night sky. You'll see it's completely lined with stars, more than what you would ever believe possible. If the weather was cloudy beforehand, you'll also notice the sky is now clear. On the second mile, the road will become even colder. This is primarily the reason why traveling in an open vehicle is very difficult. With each mile, the air will drop in temperature, even if the season should be warm. If the air is too cold to bear, even with the heat on, your only option is to speed up. With each mile, the road also becomes more complex. taking more turns and showing an increasing amount of road hazards. Be sure to always keep focused on the road in front of you in order to avoid as many bumps or obstacles as possible. Hitting a few rocks and potholes won't hamper your progress too much, but you'll want to keep in the best condition for as long as possible. If your vehicle is forced to stop because of damage, there's nothing left you can do, but eventually freeze to death. On the 3rd mile, you may begin to spot silhouettes of human figures in the linings of the trees. Pay no attention to them, even if they seem to get closer. It will be hard to resist peeking at their unnerving, distant appearance, but know that they will reveal themselves later. At this mile, the road will become dirt, if you weren't driving on it in the first place. Keep to the center of the path, and it will become narrow and wide at random intervals. On a quick side note, should you ever attempt to turn around, despite the previous warnings, you'll be left on a path which never ends. You will simply run out of fuel eventually, and be left to freeze to death in the cold conditions. On the 4th mile, you will not see the figures, but you will begin to, in a sense, hear them, in the back of your mind. A very faint, unintelligible whisper will echo. These will come and go, but you can't stop them. If they become bothersome or distracting, try to tune them out by thinking of what you desire. Attempting to listen and determine what the voices are saying will only attract them to you, and you want to be as far away from them as you can. They'll be closer later, so there's no use bringing them near you this early. On the 5th mile, you will come to a clearing. The linings of the trees to your left will disappear, to reveal a lake with no end, with a beaming great moon over the water. The illumination from the moon will be so spectacular that the vehicle's headlights will no longer be required. Restrain yourself from gazing at it. If you look at its light for even more than a few seconds, the road in front of you will end, throwing your vehicle into the water, in which you will freeze in mere minutes. The voices will be gone for this mile, but don't rejoice yet. They'll be back. On the 6th mile, take into account that you are more than halfway done. Despite the progress, you may lose hope here. The stars have disappeared at this point, leaving the sky an empty black abyss. The clearing will have ended, leading back into the woods. The only light you will have will be provided by your vehicle's headlights. They will flicker from time to time, even if you're sure they're in perfect working order. If you have a radio in your vehicle, it will be turned on here automatically. If you didn't turn it off beforehand, it will produce an overwhelming screech that will send you off the path. A calm voice will begin to speak about your greatest fears, what it is you fear in your life. It will speak in a way that will cause you to visualize the words in your mind. So don't listen to it. If you begin to comprehend what it's saying, the horrors will prove too much for you to stay on the road safely. Attempting to turn off the radio will prove no use. Speed up if you need to. And just keep your mind off the voice as much as you can. As you approach the end of the mile, the voice will fade out of the speakers, leaving your ears at peace, for now. On the 7th mile, the voices from the figures will return. It won't sound like a whisper this time, more like distant screams, growing closer with each second. At some point on this mile, you will hear one of them in your ear, as if one of them were right behind you. This is because the figures have found their way into your vehicle. Do not turn around. Their faces will shock you to a paralysis, leading you off the road. If you don't draw attention to it, it will become uninterested and hopefully leave. These beings are said to be the ones who have traveled this road before, but were not successful. They live the remainder of their existence suffering, in the darkness, with their only goal to bring other travelers down with them. It has been said from experience that these beings can't physically harm you, so long as they don't cause you to wreck. You should be fine. On the 8th mile, slow down if you're going too fast. The road here takes sharp turns, which if overshot will throw the vehicle into a pit through the trees. The cold is near fatal here. If you were to have a glass or a bottle of liquid in your vehicle, it would be solid in seconds. The heating system will become completely obsolete. Your headlights will flicker more, sometimes shutting off for a few seconds. You should brake if this happens, but do not completely stop. The figures will be following you at this point, and you should not stop for long, or else they will surround and trap your vehicle. More of the screams can be heard from outside your doors, sometimes even sounding like maniacal laughter. Their hands will claw at your windows, desperate to reach in and feel something living. Do not look at them. They won't block your windshield, and the last thing you want to happen is to crash and be trapped with them. If you don't make it from here, pray it's the freezing that ends you. On the 9th mile, your vehicle will stall. The headlights will shut off, as will all the other systems inside. There's nothing you can do to prevent this. What you will need to do is close your eyes and immediately attempt to restart the vehicle. Keep your eyes closed, as the figures would have surely surrounded you at this point. The starting of the vehicle will frighten them, and they will back away temporarily. This will give you a chance to start moving forward again. If you begin to hear the windows crack from their struggle, don't lose focus. The beings can alter the vehicle, but remember that they still do not have the strength to physically affect you. you will hear nothing but their voices rampage in your mind, as there could be anywhere between a dozen or 100 after you now. Once you start the vehicle, floor it. Floor it so long as you can stay on the path. When the mile's done, the beings will retreat. On the 10th mile, the voices of the beings will stop. If you were to look in your rearview mirror, do not actually do this, you will see them following you, but not as if they are chasing. They're watching you, as if they were seeing you off. As you go down the 10th mile, the road will be smoother, as if you were back on the 1st mile. The figures will be lining the trees on the path ahead of you. They won't be after you, but they will watch you as you pass. Some have theorized that these beings are impressed here, that you have come a long way on your journey to what you desire. This is false. They are not impressed, but they are happy. They are happy you are about to approach the next mile. They are happy because you are most likely going to your death. On the 11th and final mile, everything in your vehicle will lose power, as it did on the 9th mile. The vehicle would normally be immobile, but you will still be moving. An unknown force will be pulling you forward. In the darkness, you will see a growing red light up ahead, as if it were the light at the end of a tunnel. Close your eyes and cover them. Do whatever it takes to make sure you do not see what you are about to go through. Covering your ears would also be helpful, but keeping your eyes covered should be a higher priority. The red light is another clearing, but there's no moon or lake this time. Once it's entered, unrelenting and inconceivable noises will surround from all directions. No amount of bravery and conditioning will spare you from these sounds. The cold will turn to a merciless heat, burning all the parts of your vehicle. You will feel the illusion of flesh being burned off your bones, that every part of you is being destroyed as you travel through the screams and audible suffering. As long as you keep your eyes closed and resist the urge to see where you are, you will survive through the suffering. This will last a total of 31 seconds, but many fail to keep their vision closed during the time and are left to a fate worse than the road. Where is this mile located? Those who have survived do not know. Some have named it the transmission from hell, but whether it's part of hell is debatable. After the final mile, power will return. Stop the vehicle. Take a moment to possibly regain some of your sanity. Let the screaming in your ears begin to fade, and know that you have nearly completed your journey with the hardest task overcome. Breathe, and begin to drive forward once again. After only a kilometer, your vehicle will arrive at a dead end. Stop here, and do not attempt to move again. Nothing will happen right this second, but do not be disappointed. Relax and close your eyes. Imagine in your mind what it is you've desired the entire time. It will most likely still be the same as when you entered. But with some, this desire may actually change through making this journey. Think about what it is that you went through, such terrifying and difficult means to acquire, and imagine possessing it in your hands. Once you've completely visualized this, slowly open your eyes. You will then find yourself at the beginning of the unnamed road, where you first began. This may confuse you, but know that you are finished. Your task is done. Your mind will then turn to your reward. If what you desired is material, check in the back seat, or in the trunk if the object is larger. If the object was small enough, it might already be in your pocket. If what you desired was non-material, then do not be disappointed if the change is not immediate. Turn back to where you came from, and you will find in your life what you wanted is there. You may have found the love of your dreams. You may have gained unnatural, unimaginable power. You may have put your most hated enemy to the most satisfying revenge possible. You will have no doubt gained what you've deserved. So now that the task is done, what's the catch? Is your vehicle cursed? Is there something you're about to lose? Is your death imminent? The answer to all of these is no, of course. You've done the challenge. You've proved worthy of what you desire. As stated before, the sounds of the 11th mile will continue to exist in your mind, potentially causing you some vivid and unnatural nightmares, but those should prove nothing compared to what you've gained. Now, one last question. Is there something else you desire? Are you not satisfied yet? After all, you're left right back where you started. The road's right in front of you. So are you up for another drive? If so, buckle up and move forward. Fallout 3 contains several in-game radio stations. The most diverse and important station is Galaxy News Radio. Many players of the evil persuasion know that you can kill Three Dog, and he will be replaced by the technician Margaret. She is not a charismatic person, and has very little to say, seeming to not enjoy her new announcing duties. She never appears in person, and therefore cannot be killed. Once Three Dog is dead, you're stuck with Margaret. What most players do not know is that under certain circumstances, GNR will become a numbers station. A numbers station is a station that broadcasts an unusual coded message. Many of these exist in real life, and some hypothesize that they are a nuclear retaliation control network. Simply check Wikipedia for more information about these odd broadcasts as they relate to the real world. Back to Fallout 3. No one is really sure which actions are needed to hear the numbers station in Fallout 3. It appears that you must kill Three Dog, because no one has reported hearing the numbers station with him still alive. It also appears that you have to skip over the quest Galaxy News Radio, where you help boost the original signal so that the station can be broadcast further than just the immediate DC area. This is enough to do with either a speech check or simply using the Fallout Wiki to look up where to go next and advance the main plot. Finally, you definitely have to destroy Raven Rock. This is the actual trigger to turn GNR into a numbers station, and it will remain as such for the rest of the game. However, the vast majority of players who perform these three actions still continue hearing the standard GNR broadcasts, so there must be several more requirements the community has yet to isolate. If you're lucky enough to have hit upon the right set of circumstances, just after destroying Raven Rock, you will get a message, "Radio signal lost," and a few seconds later, "Radio signal found." You cannot, however, actually listen to GNR just yet, because you didn't boost the signal and are out of range of the broadcast at the exit of Raven Rock. Luckily, Raven Rock is situated in the mountains and is right near one of the few places outside DC that you can get high enough to catch the signal. So far, the confirmed locations to hear the GNR numbers signal are 1. Within the immediate DC area, obviously. This is true for the regular GNR throughout the game. 2. At the top of the Ferris wheel at Point Lookout. 3. On the tops of some of the SATCOM arrays you can climb on in the northwestern map area. 4. On the roof of Tenpenny Tower. Though this may be within normal broadcast range anyway, feel free to playtest and get back to me on this. 5. On the highest point of the broken bridge around Arifu. Again, may be within broadcast range anyway. 6. On some of the highest points of the mountaintops in the area near Raven Rock. This is obviously your easiest chance to first listen to the numbers station. When you tune in, you will hear an old familiar voice, Three Dog, despite the fact that you killed him earlier. However, you will quickly notice that he does not seem to be in character. So I guess it's not technically Three Dog, but just the voice actor, Eric Dellums. He reads a series of numbers in a monotone, depressed-sounding voice. He always recites a list of single digits between 9 and 12 characters long. For example, 937-917-2034. He never uses a multi-digit number like 11 or 40. These numbers are followed by widely varying lengths of Morse code. This is then followed by the song I Don't Want to Set the World on Fire. All other music tracks seem to be inactive on the numbers station. The Morse code was the easiest part of the mystery to crack, as the code is widely available and many people actually know it off by heart. We quickly had a list of the great number of the messages in English. Some sounded completely mundane and even comical, such as, "Wash the car today, maybe Chinese for dinner," or, "Have you watched my YouTube video yet? I uploaded myself kicking bums in the nuts." You may be saying, but wait, YouTube doesn't exist in the Fallout universe. And you're right. As far as we could tell, all of these messages sounded like they were based in our reality, somewhere near the present day. Some of the messages, however, are quite sinister, such as, "The Queen has died today. The world mourns. As on days like these, we are all Brits. I can't believe they've actually done it. Not long left. The noise. I can't take the noise anymore. I have a pistol in the attic." Just recently, a player on the wiki forums noticed a message that brought light to the meaning of the messages. He was reading a thread that collected all known messages, transposed from Morse to English, and saw the line 120-552-82010. "What are you talking about? You'll be missed." He realized this was a reference to the recent death of Gary Coleman, then quickly realized the numbers were the time and date of death. He immediately scanned through the messages to try and find more examples of this apparent future telling by a game that's more than a year old. The next message he read shocked him and pushed him to enlist the aid of others to decipher the codes. The message was 9454202010. Accident in the Gulf. Several dead. Oil spill apparently averted. He realized this was the BP explosion and the erroneous Day 1 assessment that the well was not leaking. From this point on, all numbers will be transcribed as times and dates. All times were given in-game, in military format, and remain so in this document. Numerous members of the Fallout Wiki message board began looking over the messages to see what else we could learn. We quickly found that most of the dates were after the game had been released. Yet oddly, some were from the past. 2215, April 15th, 1865. He's dead, and blame will probably be placed on that actor, Booth. Johnson better not cheat me out of the payment. This shed new doubt on the official version of the Lincoln assassination. As the community quickly started piling up interpretations of the messages, the mods of the sites summarily banned everyone who had posted in or even read the thread. All references to the numbers station were removed from the Fallout Wiki, and filtering software was put in place to prevent reposting of any relevant information. A few people, however, are trading emails and slowly finishing the translation of the remaining messages, and putting dates to the existing ones. The Queen has died today. The world mourns. As on days like these, we are all Brits. 4/2, March 19th, 2014. Have you watched my YouTube video yet? I uploaded myself kicking bums in the nuts. 24/16, December 24th, 2012. I can't believe Britney's actually won an Oscar. 21/33, February 27th, 2023. I can't believe they've actually done it. Not long left. They were warned, but they just had to keep pushing the boundaries of science. The noise. I can't take the noise anymore. And the light. Dear God! The universe is slowly unraveling around us. I'm not going to wait for death. I have a pistol in the attic. This is actually the only message not preceded by a string of numbers. It may be worth noting that the latest date on any of the messages is 1/27, July 6th, 2027. Fallout 3, Point Lookout. So it was past midnight. My brother and I were checking out the new DLC for Fallout 3 called Point Lookout. It had just been released at the time. He was the one playing, and I was on the bed next to the computer, observing. If you're familiar with this DLC, you know there's a mission in which you are sent to retrieve a very special book for an old man living in one of the mansions on Point Lookout. The book was called the Creepypastas, and later on you would find out that it supposedly has some kind of dark power and needs to be destroyed. You can either give it back to the man, or destroy it by taking it to the Dunwich building in the Capital Wasteland. As my brother is interested in the occult stuff, he found this quest really interesting. Before doing anything more with the quest, he went on the Fallout Wiki and looked up all the info he could find on the book, and what would happen after. I thought it was stupid of him to get everything spoiled. If he now found it such an interesting quest, why not just play it? But he said he felt some kind of greater importance to it. After shooting through the ritual site, killing all of the swamp folk there, he decided to destroy the book, which forced him to go back to the Capital Wasteland, the original game world. At this point, he didn't have enough caps to buy another riverboat ticket, so he killed Panada, a trader in Point Lookout, at the docks, and took all of her caps. I found this very strange, as my brother isn't playing a bad character, and would always do the moral and right thing, wanting good karma, but not this time. After coming back to the riverboat docks in the Capital Wasteland, he began making his way towards the Dunwich building. Girdershade, the place where you get the Nuka-Cola challenge, was the closest location discovered, so he went there, only to realize that the place was deserted. The two people that used to live in the town had vanished. We thought it must have been a game bug. As my brother never killed them, we ignored it and moved on. Finally, he arrived. He went through the levels pretty quick, witnessed the hallucinations and the self-opening doors. We weren't really scared by any of that because we knew it was going to be there. He'd gone to the underchambers and placed the book in that creepy-looking altar, and it somehow completed the mission by destroying the book. At this point, my brother figured it would be a good time to head to Rivet City and sell some stuff he'd gotten from Dunwich. Guess what? Not a single person could be found there. At this point, we got a little freaked out. We checked the other settlements, Megaton, the Citadel, Tenpenny Tower, and all of them were empty. We restarted the game and reloaded, but nothing helped. We figured we could go back to Point Lookout and see if anyone was left there. The only problem was, Tobar, the guy who owns the boat, wasn't around anymore either, so he couldn't buy a ticket. When my brother was about to leave the boat again, he was attacked by the very same people from all the settlements. It must have been over 100 people just charging the boat, throwing grenades and shooting missiles, wanting my brother dead. He didn't really have anything that could kill all the people at once, so he thought it would be a good idea if he went to the little cabin on the boat to wait for them to come. That didn't work out as we planned. They didn't run in. Instead, someone with a fat man launched a mini-nuke into the cabin, completely blowing my brother into pieces. Right after that, the game froze and we had to restart it. Now everything was fine. No one attacked us, and everyone was exactly where they were supposed to be. Lavender Town Syndrome. The Lavender Town Syndrome, also known as Lavender Town Tone, or Lavender Town Suicides, was a peak in suicides and illness of children between the ages of 7 and 12, shortly after the release of Pokemon Red and Green in Japan back in February of 1996. Rumors say that these suicides and illnesses only occurred after the children playing the game reached Lavender Town, whose theme music had extremely high frequencies that studies showed that only children and young teens can hear, since their ears are more sensitive. Due to the lavender tone, at least 200 children supposedly committed suicide, and many more developed illnesses and afflictions. The children who committed suicide usually did so by hanging or jumping from heights. Those who did not acted irrationally and complained of severe headaches after listening to Lavender Town's theme. Although Lavender Town now sounds differently depending on the game, this mass hysteria was caused by the first Pokemon game's release. After the Lavender Town incident, the programmers had fixed Lavender Town's theme music to be at a lower frequency, and since then, children were no longer affected by it. One video appeared in 2010 using special software to analyze the audio of Lavender Town's music. When played, the software created images of the unknown near the end of the audio. This raised a controversy, since the unknown didn't appear until the Generation 2 games, Silver, Gold, and Crystal. The unknown translate to "Leave Now." There is also the said beta version of Lavender Town. It is said that the beta version of Pocket Monsters was released to some kids to test the games. This is the video of the beta of Lavender Town.